My name is Arleen Bump, and I'm originally born and raised in San Jose, California. I'm a native Californian. I came to Fort Lauderdale twice, actually. I came in 1976 to 1979 as an assistant minister, and I served there for 3 years. And then I left and took over a church in the San Diego area, but I came back here in 1994 as senior pastor, and I've been here ever since. And what brought me here was to be in service to this community. It began with Dr. Norman and Dr. Dorothy Lundy. Dr. Norman had a church in Miami. At that time we were called Church of Religious Science or Science of Mind Center. There was nothing up here at all. That was the only religious science church in Florida. And Dr. Dorothy was up here, and they had a lot of friends up in this way. And they said, well, we don't want to go to Miami every Sunday. Could you just kind of teach us? We could get together and study together. Dr. Dorothy, only at that time, met with a group of people that they knew, friends, etc. And I think there were like 15 or 20 in the back of somebody's yacht on the Intercoastal. They met every Sunday morning on the back of this yacht, and they studied the Science of Mind textbook together and had questions and discussion, and Dr. Dorothy led those discussions. Well, the group grew, and it grew bigger than the group in Miami. And so it evolved into Dr. Norman coming up here as well. Rented a women's center that was down here on 26th Street in the late 60s, and we were chartered as a church with Religious Science International. In 1969, this property was donated to the church by Al Hagen, who was then vice president of the board. He was also mayor of Wilton Manors. They had a fundraiser, and they built this magnificent building for $150,000. It was built with the intention that this auditorium, which would hold about 500 seats, we have a big piece of property out in the front. And the original intention was that that lawn area would be a add-on building that would be an auditorium for Sunday morning that would seat 1,000 people. And that this particular room would turn into a classroom. It never got built. The Lundys had probably 500 or 600 people at the time. And again, there were no other churches or anywhere for people to go for New Thought, Science of Mind teaching. So it was very successful. They were here until 1976 when they chose to retire. And they searched around, they said, to a lot of religious science ministers, and found myself and Dr. Oscar Pitcock, who was my husband at the time. We were pastoring in the Monterey, California church. He was pastor, I was assistant minister. Well, our group in Monterey was small. It was, 75 people maybe. And we said yes. We came in 1976. In 1979, Dr. Pitcock and I got divorced, so he stayed, and I candidated for a church near San Diego, the area of El Cajon, California. And I was there for 2 years and met Nelson Bump, the man I married in 1982. So another minister came in in 1980, Dr. Bill Tolliver. He was minister here for, I believe, 14 years. And then he retired, and I came back as full pastor. I'd kind of come full circle. But we're a church of religious science, so it's a church organization teaching the science of mind. The Science of Mind is a textbook that was written by our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, and the textbook is a compilation of his journals. He studied religion, philosophy, science, and took the common thread from each one of those places. And the common thread always was, there's only one, and we're all a part of that one. It wasn't intended to be a textbook, it was his journal. And so when you read it, sometimes it can be challenging because you can kind of see where he evolved, where he changed his mind. That's been the basis of when we say we're teaching foundations or we're teaching basic science of mind, that's called a first year class. It's wonderful for new people to come in and say, well, what is the science of mind? How do I figure it out? And what is religious science? And so we go through the textbook. We go through all of it together over a period from September to May or June. So finding the common thread and lighting these, we call it the flames of faith, every Sunday morning at the beginning of our service. We have 10 candles. It represents the 10 religions, and it is about recognizing, we say, all paths lead to God. Our intention is to understand that we create a world that works for everyone with no one and no thing left out, of having a worldview of you and me, rather than what our culture teaches us is a world of you or me, which is one of separation. I came into the science of mind teaching as a result of an incurable disease. And as a result of taking science of mind classes over a period of 3 years, I was able to dissolve that incurable disease. People go, oh, really? What did you do? Did you become a vegetarian? And well, way back then, there were no vegetarians that were obvious. It was really about taking charge of my life and letting go of the beliefs that didn't work for me, such as blaming somebody else, having somebody else be responsible for my happiness, etc. So out of that, I continued to study, and I became a licensed professional practitioner. We teach, again, how to think, not what to think. And so that's all tied in with that. In 1974, I was licensed as a minister of religious science in Monterey, California, and ordained in 1976, a full ordination. And that was the year just before we came here to Fort Lauderdale, where we were here for 3 years. And in 1982, we moved to Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which I dearly love. Had a small religious science church there, and a small religious science study group in Vancouver. But there was nothing else. There were no other churches or teachings there. I was there for 10 years. At the end of that time, I went back to California. I served in the Glendale, California church in the LA area. I was there for 2 years, and then I got called here to Fort Lauderdale when the minister was retiring. It happened in 1994, and I've been here ever since permanently. We probably have 500 churches, groups, study groups, different versions of ministry, and they are all over the world. We've got 2 major study groups in the Ukraine right now that have been there for years. I was president of Religious Science International in the early 90s for 4 or 5 years, and I traveled all over and visited churches in different places and do what we can to spread the word and the education. I served on the board of directors for, 25 or 30 years. I'm currently still on the board of education, working with curriculum, because curriculum, the teaching itself, that's kind of my heart thing, is to the teaching ability. And as we embrace all faiths from their highest ideal and intention, we light this 10th candle to encompass all aspects of the divine, from the one to the many. And now that our flames of faith are fully lighted, we move forward into our celebration, realizing and reaffirming that all paths lead to God. Separation. So we have these candles on there every Sunday morning as a way and making a statement about each of the religions that shows about what they stand for. And so what are the qualities of that particular religion? So it's about the religion, not about the people who might choose to interpret it or use it differently, but it's about the purity of what the religions are. That's been a big response from people who come for the first time that say, oh, when I heard you do that, it was so powerful. It was just so good to see that, again, all paths lead to God. There's a commonality.